So help you God.
Tonight, Sonia Sotomayor answers her critics about the kind of Supreme Court justice she would be.
The task of a judge is not to make law, it is to apply the law.
I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, exclusive CBS News video. U.S. and Afghan forces fight to take back a town overrun by the Taliban. In Florida, the parents of 16 children murdered. 3 suspects are under arrest, and the police are looking for as many as 5 more. And an unwelcome visitor to summer camps, the H1N1 flu, forcing some camps to close.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. The judge raised her right hand today and swore to tell the truth. And even among Republicans, the betting is the next time Sonia Sotomayor takes an oath, it will be as an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. But as the Senate Judiciary Committee opened confirmation hearings today, much of the public is not sure how they feel about the judge. In a CBS News poll out tonight, only 23% have a favorable opinion, down 10 points since President Obama nominated her. Nearly 3 times as many say they are undecided. Sotomayor's 23% favorable rating is 7 points higher, by the way, than Samuel Alito's and a bit lower than John Roberts when their confirmation hearings began. Meanwhile, a little over half the people we polled believe it's important that an Hispanic be on the U.S. Supreme Court. Wyatt Andrews now with day 1 of the hearings.
After waiting 7 weeks to defend her record, Sonia Sotomayor, the nation's first Hispanic nominee to the Supreme Court, began by giving credit to her mother.
I am here, as many of you have noted, because of her aspirations and sacrifices for both my brother Juan and me.
In a day confined to speech-making, Democrats and Republicans revealed very different approaches to judging the judge. To Democrats, it's all about her 17-year record on the federal bench, a record the nonpartisan Congressional Research Service said defies categorization along ideological lines.
If the #1 standard that conservatives use and apply is judicial modesty and humility, they should vote for Judge Sotomayor unanimously.
But Republicans plan to focus on her speeches, not her judicial rulings, arguing her speeches hold the key to what she really thinks.
It just bothers me when somebody,
especially her now famous remark that a wise Latina woman would reach a better conclusion than a white male.
I think your experience can add a lot to the court, but I don't think it makes you better than anyone else.
Sotomayor did not address the charges specifically, but made it obvious she plans to define herself.
Many senators have asked me about my judicial philosophy. Simple. Fidelity to the law.
The hearing marked the first spotlight moment for former comedian, now Senator Al Franken, who cast himself as new but ready.
I may not be a lawyer, but neither are the overwhelming majority of Americans.
And there was one moment of raw candor as Republican Lindsey Graham analyzed the judge's chances.
Unless you have a complete meltdown, you're going to get confirmed.
Now, a complete meltdown is not likely to come from this seasoned federal judge, but if any heat gets generated by these hearings, that could come tomorrow when the questioning begins. Katie?
Wyatt Andrews. Wyatt, thank you very much. Bob Schieffer is our chief Washington correspondent and anchor of Face the Nation. And Bob, as we saw, some Republicans didn't really treat her with kid gloves. If she's heading for confirmation, what do you think their objective was?
Well, I think, I guess they don't want the folks back home to think they're potted plants, for one thing. But, I mean, the other part is they have been very careful to strike this along philosophical lines. They want to make sure that they got the comment from her that they got today when she said on the bench she will apply the law, she will not make the law. But I tell you, in the end, Lindsey Graham is right, Katie. It's going to be very hard for senators to vote against this wonderful life story that this woman has, who was raised by a widowed mother and went on to be the first Hispanic woman to be nominated.
And they want those Hispanic voters, too. We can't forget that. Bob, let's go back to our latest CBS poll. President Obama's overall job approval rating is down 6 points since June. His approval rating for handling the economy is down 9 points. I'm just curious, what do you think is behind these declining numbers?
I think it is all about the economy, Katie. One of the findings in our poll says that nearly 70% of people in America are worried about losing their jobs, at least somewhat worried. When people are in that kind of mood, the president's popularity is going to go down. They want to see some results. He's launched all these programs. Now they want to see that the programs are having some impact.
All right. Bob Schieffer in Washington. Bob, thank you. Good to talk to you. President Obama made another nomination today. He chose Regina Benjamin, a 51-year-old doctor from Alabama, to be the next Surgeon General. Benjamin has devoted her practice to caring for the poor, including many immigrants from Southeast Asia. She's been a leader in the fight to make sure everyone has access to good health care. In other news tonight, former Vice President Dick Cheney finds himself in a familiar situation in the middle of controversy. It involves a secret CIA operation to wipe out al-Qaeda's brain trust following 9/11. The problem is congressional leaders were never told about it. And tonight, Nancy Cordes reports some of them say it's time the full story came out.
The CIA never briefed Congress on a sensitive counterterrorism plan because former Vice President Dick Cheney told the CIA not to. That's what Democrats say CIA Director Leon Panetta told them when he met with Intelligence Committee members last month, right after he learned about the program and killed it.
You can't have a vice president, a president, or a senator say don't follow the law.
Cheney's direct involvement is fueling calls for an investigation.
This can't stand. To have something operating for almost a decade with not one member of Congress ever having been informed.
Government sources say the on-again, off-again secret CIA plan was conceived after 9/11 but never got off the ground. It reportedly involved taking out major al-Qaeda figures at close range.
I'm sure that there's a lot of programs that we've never been briefed on that an administration may have thought about doing but never implemented.
He's one of many Republicans who say Democrats are manufacturing their outrage to provide cover for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who came under fire when she said this about waterboarding.
The CIA was misleading the Congress. They mislead us all the time.
If Vice President Cheney did say to the CIA, don't tell Congress, is that against the law?
It's probably skirting the law. The question is, what do you do with that? And I don't think there's going to be any will on Congress to prosecute him.
Potentially more serious is a criminal probe being considered by the Attorney General, who says he'll decide soon whether to investigate the Bush administration's harsh interrogation tactics. Katie?
Nancy Cordes reporting from the Capitol tonight. Now turning to the war on terror in Afghanistan, the Taliban has launched a new offensive to destabilize the country and intimidate voters before the upcoming August elections. After the Taliban captured one small town in eastern Afghanistan, U.S. and Afghan forces engaged them in a dramatic firefight to take it back. CBS News has an exclusive look at the operation as Mandy Clark reports from the front line.
This is the battle for Baj-Matal. It started at dusk yesterday. Insurgents high on ridges, pouring fire down at this exposed U.S. position. Hundreds of Taliban overran Baj-Matal a week ago, the largest town in the eastern province of Nuristan. 100 U.S. troops from the 10th Mountain Division, backed by the Afghanistan Army, are now fighting to win it back, as you can see in this exclusive video shot by CBS News. This battle lasted an hour. One U.S. soldier was killed along with 10 insurgents. U.S. medics treated an insurgent who said he worked for a notorious Taliban leader, accused of a series of attacks on coalition forces.
Bags of pecan bullets.
A small arsenal of Taliban weapons were found at the local hotel. 1,700 AK-47 rounds, more than 30 rocket-propelled grenades, and explosives.
The Taliban takeover of Baj-Matal was a message to villagers, but also to the people of Nuristan, that the Taliban will not tolerate voting in next month's elections.
88 voting registration cards from villagers were found on one dead insurgent. They were taken from villagers by force.
And so the Taliban has made a concerted effort over the last month, simply targeting the voting sites. They are marginalizing the government, trying to ensure that they can't participate in the election.
The Taliban may be gone for now, but if they manage to scare people here from voting in the election, it will be a blow to Afghanistan's efforts to build democracy here. Mandy Clark, CBS News, Barge Matal.
Here in this country, the double murder that shocked the Florida Panhandle and the nation. The victims, a couple who opened their home to more than a dozen children, were shot to death in their own home. 3 men are under arrest, and now the police say as many as 5 others may be involved. And there is still this unanswered question: why would anyone do this? The latest now from Mark Strassman.
Bird and Melanie Billings live to love. Wealthy, they're real treasures with their 17 kids. A dozen of them had special needs, all adopted by the couple over the years.
To our mom and dad, their children were perfect.
Which is why police call their cold-blooded murders chilling and shocking. Last Thursday, security cameras showed 2 cars pulled up to their 9-bedroom house, a Dodge van in the front, an Escalade in the back. 5 masked gunmen, dressed ninja style, went inside. Less than 5 minutes later, the couple was shot dead.
It leads me to believe that this was a very well-planned and methodical operation.
9 children also inside the home were unharmed. Police believe robbery was one of several motives.
It will be a very long time, I believe, before we piece together the truth as to why this family was selected.
35-year-old Leonard Gonzalez Jr. and 41-year-old Wayne Coldiron face murder charges. Police say that's Gonzalez in the middle, buying clothing at a local Walmart with 2 other possible suspects.
Mr. Gonzalez, you've been charged with tampering with evidence.
Today, Leonard Gonzalez Sr. was the first to be arraigned. Police say he confessed to driving a getaway car and trying to repaint it later. They also expect to make as many as 5 more arrests.
To know there are people capable of this type of violence and people with this magnitude of hate in their lives is sickening.
Police say one of the 3 suspects already in custody was the mastermind, but won't say which one. They're also reviewing store security videotape from several major local retailers, hoping to spot more suspects buying the black clothing they went on to wear in this brutal, methodical attack. Katie?
Mark Strassman, a very strange and disturbing story. Thank you, Mark. Coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, why money from the stimulus plan is landing at small airports most Americans will never use. The country has just reached a dubious milestone. The Treasury reported today that 9 months into the fiscal year, the federal deficit has, for the first time ever, topped $1 trillion. Yes, trillion with a T. This year, of course, we have all that stimulus spending. And in our CBS News poll, only 21% of Americans say the stimulus has made the economy better. But twice as many believe it will help in the long run. If you want to know where those stimulus dollars are having an impact, you might want to look up. Any small planes you spot could be bound for one of the hundreds of tiny airports that scored a lot of taxpayer money. Cheryl Atkinson follows the money.
In upstate New York, there's a tiny airport owned by the Williamson Flying Club, a private social club for local pilots. Club President Joe Ebert is pleased to show off their brand new $400,000 runway paid for by your tax dollars.
So this is all new? This is all new.
It's part of $1 billion in stimulus money handed out to 300 airports around the nation.
We were looking for projects that airports in areas around the country desperately needed to be done for safety and security concerns.
Yet some of the projects hardly seem urgent. And the nonprofit journalism group ProPublica says taxpayers might be surprised to find
that airports they'd never heard of in communities they will never visit are getting some of the maximum stimulus grants.
In fact, more than $350 million is being spent on little-used airports or ones catering to recreational flyers, corporate jets, and remote communities. That's because Congress's stimulus rules don't give priority to the most congested airports or the biggest safety problems. Consider that Los Angeles Airport doesn't have the money to install critical taxiway warning lights, and a third of the nation's largest airports have substandard safety areas for when planes veer off the runway. Yet tiny Purdue University Airport got $800,000 to help keep animals off the runway. That's even though they've reported just one incident. A plane ran over a skunk in 1996. In Alaska, $15 million went to build a bigger, better airport for the town of Uzinki. Population just 165. That's roughly $90,000 per resident. The stimulus funds were granted by the FAA under the Department of Transportation.
Why shouldn't that cost be borne by the people who benefit from it?
Well, I mean, the community can't raise that kind of money. Rural airports deserve to be safe and kept up as much as other airports do.
She also points out small airports are used by rescue aircraft and cargo haulers, and the stimulus projects create jobs. But nobody would tell us how many unemployed workers, if any, were hired to pave the Flying Club's runway. The whole job took just 5 days. On the bright side, all airports that get stimulus funds are open to the public. So if you ever feel like flying to a little airport, there's one in upstate New York that's happy to spread out the welcome mat on their brand new runway. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Sodus, New York.
Now the latest on the H1N1 flu virus. A study out today says it's very similar to the strain that caused the 1918 pandemic. Researchers say this latest strain thrives in the lungs, but antiviral medications can be effective against it. People born before 1918, we're told, are immune. But Dr. Jennifer Ashton tells us there's concern about the very young as they go to summer camp.
Kids have been coming to North Carolina's Blue Ridge Mountains for the Blue Star Camp experience for 60 years. But this year, 13-year-old Nikki Jaffe experienced something she never expected.
Well, I had a really bad headache, and I just didn't feel good overall.
And 11-year-old Jessica Bachner said she'd never felt so bad.
It felt different than just having a fever.
Under your tongue, way in the back.
It was in fact likely H1N1 or swine flu, now spreading through summer camps across America. At least 50 have reported outbreaks, and the CDC is urging all camps to take precautions. Since the new flu is affecting people between the ages of 5 and 24 more than any other group, campers and counselors are especially vulnerable. At Blue Star, 2 campers tested positive and 35 others were believed to be infected, but none of the cases were serious. They were given antiviral medication and isolated.
They would come in the first day with about 101, take their Tamiflu. The third day they wanted to go back to camp.
Under the tongue, way in the back.
This session, Blue Star isn't taking any chances. Kids showing up with fevers are sent home. At the mess hall, sharing is out, hand sanitizer is in.
Always use antibacterial or wash your hands before you eat.
Are you going to be careful, Mason?
I'll try my best.
Camps for kids with health conditions like muscular dystrophy or asthma have shut down altogether so as not to put more vulnerable children at risk, Katie.
Meanwhile, Jennifer, what is the CDC recommending for sleepaway and day camps?
They leave it largely up to the camp's discretion, Katie. They're recommending they educate their staff about how to detect signs of flu-like illness, isolate children who may be sick for up to 7 days, and send them home at their discretion.
And what about kids going to school this fall? What's in store for them?
We will see an additional $1 billion allotted to a potential vaccine program due out in mid-October. The CDC will be recommending that school-age children are at the top of that list, Katie, even if they've been sick this summer.
All right. Dr. Jennifer Ashton. Jennifer, thank you. And we'll be right back. Finally tonight, a famous Englishman once said, "All the world's a stage." And proving the point, the Brits have just opened a new one on top of a plinth. That's a pedestal for a statue in downtown London. As for the show, well, as Mark Phillips tells us, it ain't exactly Shakespeare.
In London's Trafalgar Square, they've had a problem for 141 years. Ever since they built it to commemorate Horatio Nelson's victory over Napoleon's navies. One pedestal has remained empty because no one could agree what to put on it. Now they're putting anybody on it. 1 person per hour, round the clock for the next 3 months, 2,400 people. living sculpture, it's charitably called.
I think it's absolutely right that instead of putting an individual hero up there, it can demonstrate that we can all be heroes.
The problem is some heroes are more interesting than others. Stephen Stockton just stood there. Others have tossed paper airplanes, performed with puppets, supported their favorite causes. To the artist who developed the concept, it's a portrait of modern Britain.
It's the composite picture of those 2,400 hours. It's going to tell us something about the nature of the UK now.
Or the nature of UK installation art now. Anybody can apply to be a Plinther. The winners are chosen by lottery. Inevitably, the expression has been, someday your plinth will come, which many think is about the only amusing thing about the plinth. There are lessons for the Plinthers here. 15 minutes of fame may be better than a whole hour, and keep moving before the birds of Trafalgar Square deliver the same verdict on you that they have on the real statues. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.